Hello dear viewer and welcome to GLEBA, the best planet in Factorio. My goal is to build a 1 million effective science per minute megabase. But before even thinking about the late game, I first have to set up a proper GLEBA starter base. I have a lot of items on my spaceship, so let's use this cargo landing pad to get it all down to the planet's surface. Because I was already on Volcanus, I have access to foundries, big mining drills and calcite. This will make it way more easy to get basic resources like iron plates and steel. Grr, I hate these exploding plants. Using a couple of cliff explosives, because I was already on Volcanus. To unlock the basic GLEBA technologies, I have to farm some of these copper rocks, iron, and of course both fruits, jelly nut and Yumako. The most important thing when setting up a starter base is producing electricity and setting up a proper grid. I'm using the same substation blueprint that you already know from the previous episodes on Norvis. I'm starting with solar energy, but I want to transition to the heating tower immediately. I'm using the foundries and calcite to turn iron and copper into liquid metal. Efficiency modules to keep the electricity consumption low. The foundry not only does have amazing productivity, you can also make copper cables directly. I'm directly inserting into this assembler to make green circuits. Let's move on by setting up the heating tower. We require water, but that's where I realize I have to also make concrete to craft it. The big mining drills from Volcanus come in handy to mine a lot of stone. From time to time I switch the foundry recipe to get other products, like for example pipes or underground pipes. To make concrete we have to combine liquid iron, water and stone bricks. And for the heat exchanger and turbines we have to produce a lot of copper. The first heating tower is ready. You can burn both fruits, but especially gelinet has a nice fuel value. As soon as the heat exchanger reaches 500 degrees, the turbine starts producing electricity. Of course you can also burn wood, but please don't burn spoilage, we need it later on. I'm setting up a requester chest that will continuously request jelly nuts, and if the heating tower falls below 800 degrees, the inserter will put it in to burn. As you can see, we are already way above 800 degrees. Now I'm preparing the production of landfill, which is very important to make biochambers. To craft the first biochambers, we have to locate a small egg raft and destroy it. In this case, I got 3 eggs. I craft 1 biochamber manually, but the next one should be made with biochambers, because of the 50% productivity bonus. That's number 2. I'm now using the second biochamber for Yumako processing. Now I will switch the recipe to nutrients from Yumako mesh. The goal is to get a lot of nutrients to make more eggs. I let this process run for quite a while. Crafting eggs requires large quantities of nutrients. Now switching recipe to egg production. But we also need some water. Turning 1 egg into multiple eggs. Now we've got 2. When running out of nutrients, switch back to the Yumako processing and the nutrients from Yumako mesh recipe. Sometimes I have to pick up some more landfill or green circuits. The first biochamber making more biochambers is still there. That's why you can already see 4 biochambers in action. At some point I had enough eggs to craft the desired amount of biochambers. If I'm not mistaken, I think in total I crafted 28 biochambers. This will be enough for the starter base. I left 2 spare eggs to kickstart the science production later on. The first major goal is done. We have enough biochambers and power. In the past I built my GLEBA starter base using belts. This time I want to use bots to change things up. Starting with the Yumako and jelly nut processing. I use blue requester chests for the machine's input and red passive provider chests for the output. It's important to check the trash unrequested checkbox. And because biochambers burn nutrients instead of using electricity, I create a separate dedicated logistics group for nutrients. This group can then be reused by all biochambers and recipes. To not produce too many items, I connect the inserter with a logistic network. In this case, I only want to produce a maximum of 200 jelly. The trash unrequested option I mentioned earlier in the requester chests is very important, because when items spoil in a chest, bots will then automatically remove the spoilage. After setting up bioflux, I now use a biochamber to make nutrients from bioflux. It's the most efficient recipe, and because the throughput is so damn high, I utilize 3 output inserters outputting into 3 passive provider chests. Limiting the maximum amount of nutrients that should be available in the logistic network. Okay, great, let's move on with the egg production. Eggs require a significant amount of nutrients. So even though we are building a bot base, I want to have a dedicated biochamber making nutrients just for the egg production. And because of the high throughput required, I will use a fast transport belt. There's another option on the blue requester chests I want to highlight. The request from buffer chests option. Even when no buffer chests are involved at all. If you check the box, the requester chest has a higher priority compared to other requester chests that don't have this option enabled. This way, the egg production has a higher priority requesting more eggs than the science production. Okay, moving on. These 3 buffer chests are supposed to store a significant amount of spoilage. Below the chest is an assembling machine, making nutrients from spoilage. The inserter supplying the assembling machine should only be active when there is basically no spoilage in the logistic network. Which means this is only a backup to make nutrients. And if there's more than 3000 spoilage in the system in total, the top inserters will burn the spoilage in the heating tower. Because I use buffer chests to store the spoilage, it will be available for other production lines and recipes later on. Unfortunately, I'm out of resources, so let's set up the production of basic products to craft the chests, inserters and transport belts. Four yellow storage chests without filter for miscellaneous items. I'm setting up 2 green buffer chests for the Yumako and jelly nut seeds. Makes it a bit more easier for me to pick up those seeds later on. And I'm using 2 yellow storage chests with a filter for jelly nut and Yumako. Using buffer chests to request calcite for the liquid metal production. Okay, time to kickstart production by making nutrients from spoilage. This moment in Factorio is always exciting. Will everything work as expected? Okay, looking good so far. I can see some Yumako mesh and jelly. But it seems like I didn't produce enough bioflux and nutrients. Other than that, the request from buffer chest priorities are properly set, I guess? Yeah. Oh, this one shouldn't have priority. Let's put in some more spoilage and try again. Okay, that's what I want to see. If the nutrients from bioflux kicks in, we are fine. Setting up the base took longer than expected, which means the 2 spare pentapod eggs spoiled. So let's find a new one. Time to multiply some eggs. Oh, and I forgot to set up an inserter and a chest to get rid of the spoilage on the belt. By the way, looking at the top right corner, we are already at mining productivity 13. From time to time I have to harvest new fruits. Did you know that you can plant the seeds manually? You don't have to set up an agricultural tower to regrow those fruits. Okay, the science pack has been unlocked, so let's set up the requester chest. Using the dedicated nutrient logistic group again, and very important, the request from buffer chest option is not enabled. I want the egg production to have priority. I should have enabled trash unrequested though. I just realized while editing the video. Farming Yumako and planting seeds manually. Setting up the agricultural towers is the most annoying thing about GLEBA in my opinion. And I don't have the required amount of belts yet. That's why I want to work on setting up the infinite production of iron and copper. It's very simple and straightforward. The only exception to this is there needs to be a backup bacteria production if this comes to a stop. So let's set up an assembler for each to produce iron and copper bacteria. I've used circuit logic in the past to activate and deactivate this process, but whatever dude, I'm just requesting the minimal amount of jelly. This rocket silo is supposed to launch the science packs into orbit. I'm setting up a buffer chest for the science packs to minimize the distance to the rocket silo. Trash unrequested to get rid of spoilage is activated. And the first science packs are on their way to Norvis. The first research I want to get is health for the memes, followed by captivity, which is required to get the biolab. Amazing, my engineer now has 300 health. To produce more energy, a second heat exchanger with turbines. I want to get rid of the manual seed planting soon. To make it happen, I have to produce a lot of fast transport belts. Damn, setting up the outposts is always the worst part about this planet. Nevertheless, it has to be done, so let's use the electrical grid and robo grid blueprints I made on Norvis. Well, this tower won't have enough fields to plant seeds, which means I have to produce some extra soil. For the transportation of seeds, I will use bots. For the Yumako fruit, belts and underground belts. Requesting 20 seeds should be sufficient. At the end of the belt, I need an inserter and a chest to remove spoilage. Thinking about it, I could also just insert the spoilage into the storage chest, because there's always an active request for more spoilage, the way I set up the buffer chests in the beginning. Okay, the transportation of Yumako is done, but I have to set up the same thing for Jelly Nut. Fortunately, the distance between my base and the Jelly Nut field is lower. Okay, seems like I completed the most annoying task. Both fruits are now being transported into the starter base automatically. As I said, I have to create more artificial Yumako soil. Meanwhile on Norvis, I'm about to complete the efficiency module level 3 research. And because my Norvis base only has 4 single oil patches, increasing plastic bar productivity is very important. I have to leave GLEBA soon, which means I need a mall for the most important items to remotely control my base. Okay, I think I'm very satisfied with this base. So let's go back to Norvis and capture a spider nest. And get more plastic bar productivity. I made a video about this early game spaceship. I absolutely love it. Strider Cargo. Check out the video. Fortunately, a single biter spawner appeared south of my base. So let's expand the perimeter wall and capture it. I think I had 200 bioflux from GLEBA to craft the capture bot rocket. For now that's enough, but I have to set up automatic transportation as well. Alright, now that the biolab research is available, let's prioritize it. This chest is supposed to request the bioflux. I want to continuously produce biter eggs. To make them available to the logistic network, I use a buffer chest. Excess eggs will just be burnt in this heating tower. On GLEBA I need more rocket silos to launch the science packs and bioflux at the same time. Even though I set up some lasers for safety, I want to use circuit logic to only transport and request biter eggs when needed. To make it happen, I count the ingredients in the assembler, only requesting eggs when all other ingredients are present. Now that I have a handful of biolabs, I can say goodbye to my old labs. The following biolab setup is only temporary. As you know, the goal is to build a 1 million science per minute base, which means I need a fully beaconed biolab setup, which is very expensive. Until it's done, these biolabs here are supposed to get some important research done. Speaking of important research, next up, productivity modules level 3. To produce them, I also need biter eggs. I don't want my bots to transport them, which is why I built this belt ending at the heating tower. If no machine picks up a biter egg, it will just be burned. Meanwhile on Volcanoes, I'm about to finish the turbo transport belt research. To prepare production, I need way more tungsten steel and express belts. Setting up circuit logic again to only insert eggs when they are actually needed. The decider combinator will read the contents of the assembling machine. Eggs will only be inserted when all other ingredients are present. Works like a charm, and I can already tell you, dozens of hours later, the lasers for safety never fired a single shot. I will need a lot of productivity level 3 modules for my new lab setup, but also to maximize productivity of my Norvis base. Setting up turbo transport belts on Volcanoes. I will ship them to the other planets using my cargo transport ship. Okay, time to construct the fully beaconed lab setup. I want to build it over here, north of my base, so I have to get rid of the solar panels. They are not really required at this point because of my nuclear reactor, but I mean, let's rebuild them over here. Designing the endgame lab setup. I'm using the maximum amount of beacons, which is 16, and it has to be tileable. It needs to support all 12 science packs and feature a belt and inserter removing spoilage. For aesthetic reasons, I add some lamps. I'm sure it's tileable, but I haven't really tested it using actual science packs. Can't wait to complete this build and see it in action. Biolabs produce an insane amount of pollution, which is why I need efficiency modules level 3. To produce them, I need a lot of spoilage. So why not take some biter eggs and turn them into nutrients? Nutrients will spoil very quickly, giving me an infinite resource of spoilage. The module production in my mall has become the #1 consumer of processing units. And because of the increased processing units demand, I have to make more green circuits as well. Damn, I have to say this blueprint looks really nice. How many biolabs do I even need? At this point in the game, I have to find the perfect balance between productivity, pollution and research speed. Using 4 productivity modules is way too much for my base at this point. So I will probably start by using 3 and counteract the speed penalty with speed modules and the pollution penalty with efficiency modules. Right now I don't have enough beacons and modules, so let's get rid of them for now. Later on, with infinite research productivity research, I will switch to full speed modules anyway. The Biolab blueprint only works with turbo transport belts. Okay, time to deconstruct the temporary biolabs and reroute the science belts. Can't wait to see the new labs in action. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. I hope you liked this content and this playthrough. Here we go, the last remnants of the temporary lab setup get deconstructed. Will the new setup work without a hiccup? Looking good so far. I can see all science packs in all biolabs. Let's check the pollution statistics. The new biolabs emit 240 pollution per minute. It would be way worse without efficiency modules. Until now I shipped rocket parts like processing units from Norvis to GLEBA. To make the planet independent, I set up plastic production. Now it's possible to produce some red circuits. And after making biosulfur, the production of sulfuric acid and processing units is possible. Unfortunately, I don't have electromagnetic plants yet. I will conquer Fulgora in the next episode. Fulgora will also unlock processing unit productivity research. Until then, all I can do is use productivity level 3 modules. As I'm researching mining productivity level 17, my base develops a coal bottleneck. Believe it or not, but my initial coal patch is about to be depleted. I'm curious to see how long I can play without the need to expand my Norvis base. Thanks again for watching, like and subscribe, and see you in the next episode on Fulgora.